5 things to check before you go boating. Hi, Captain Jeff from the Sailing Academy. 5 things that are really, really important to check. Number 1, the first thing you want to check before you go boating is the weather. The weather can make a huge difference as to whether the day goes fantastically or if you get in big, big trouble. What weather do you want to check? Not just the average weather forecast, maybe on a phone app or something like that. You want to go with the marine weather forecast. The National Weather Forecast has every region along the coast of the United States broken up into specific regions. You want to check your region. Just because it says it's happening somewhere else doesn't mean it's the weather where you are. I'll go to my marine VHF radio, and in the United States, you can go to channel from 1 to 10. Whichever is coming across the most clear is the channel that you're going to pick up your weather on, and it will give you the weather for your region. If it's a small craft advisory, you exercise caution. If you're a new sailor, if you've only taken Intro to Sailing or ASA 101, you want to stay away from small craft advisories. Next level up is going to be a gale warning. Gale warning starts about 34 knots of wind on up into the high 40s. If it's a gale warning, you definitely don't go out unless you're a very, very experienced sailor. So check the weather, watch out for thunderstorms, rains, and it'll tell you the sea state for your region. Second thing to check before you go boating is your bilge. You always want a nice, clean, dry bilge. And sometimes there might be a little bit of water in there because a bilge pump won't pick up everything. It'll pick everything up until just a little bit. Make sure you know how much water remains in your bilge after the pump has drained everything out. All the water that gets in your boat should run to this one central location and collect right here. That's what your bilge is, and every boat has one. So check the bilge. That's really important because it's not a safety issue to tell you if you're going to have a problem. It tells you if you already have a problem. If it's full of water, you need to find the source. If it's fresh water, might be coming from a leaky hatch or a window, but if it's seawater, then it's probably coming from outside somewhere. You want to fix that before you go sailing. I'm on an extended sail. Every watch I require people to come down and just open the bilge boards up and take a look inside, make sure it's nice and dry. And after you're sailing, you want to go ahead and check it before you leave the boat. Make sure that no water made its way into the boat during your sail. Third thing you want to check before you go boating is your boat safety gear. There's a minimum amount of things that are required by the U.S. Coast Guard if you're going to be sailing or boating in the United States. One is a horn, whistle, or bell. Another thing is you need 3 in-date flares that work for day or that are rated for day and nighttime. You also need an adequate number of fire extinguishers and a personal flotation device for every person aboard the boat, plus a Type 4 throwable that's easily accessible from the cockpit in case there'll be an overboard situation. Now, those are the only required pieces of safety equipment by the United States Coast Guard. There is a list of things that, as an ASA school, that we teach that you want to have aboard, like a VHF radio. It's not a requirement, but you need to have it on a pleasure boat just to be safe, be able to communicate with other people. How about a first aid kit? Bring a first aid kit. You know, you don't want someone getting a cut or laceration and not being able to treat it while at sea. Sometimes it could take several hours to get back to port, be able to treat something. So a basic first aid kit would be a great thing to have aboard. Also, simple tools to fix things is very important. Navigation equipment, obviously an anchor and a secondary anchor to be able to stop the boat in case there's an engine problem. We actually have an extensive list. It's in our American Sailing Association ASA Book 101 that gives you some recommended items. One thing I personally recommend always to have with you is a knife. I have one on my multi-tool. I can open this up and pretty much fix or replace a cotter pin on any piece of rigging just with this one simple tool. And I don't need a whole toolkit just to go sailing for a day. But I always recommend having a knife on you. Most of these extra things, I'll go ahead and carry in my sail bag, so I always have them with me as I go from boat to boat. Most important part of your safety gear are the things that are required by the Coast Guard to be aboard. Things to check before boating. Number 4, if you're on a sailboat, it's going to be rigging. Go over your rigging, and what are you looking for? These are my turnbuckles, cotter pins. I'm also going to check these clevis pins and make sure the clevis pins all have their cotter pins in, or these rings that secure the clevis pins in place. One time I was sailing offshore and I was just walking around doing, we were several days out to sea, and I was just walking around doing a rigging check, and I noticed that this pin right here had backed out and was only holding half of the fork from my main cap shroud. And gosh, we hit a storm that night, and I bet you if we had time to fix that we could have lost our whole rig that night. So thank God I saw it, and we went ahead and tacked over on the opposite tack to cause a little bit of, to give some slack on this. Pulled out the cotter pins, loosened this up, and was able to put the clevis pin back in, and then put a new cotter pin in from a spare kit that I keep in my rigging bag. So you want to check these. These are your shrouds that go to the top of the mast. They're holding your mast up from side to side. Your forestay and backstay are going to have similar fittings like this. You want to check all the clevis pins and cotter pins. And as your standing rigging, you can also go over your running rigging, which are going to be the lines that are used to control your sails. Make sure there's no frays or breaks and those things too. And number 5 of the 5 things to check before boating. If you're a power boat, you can probably skip number 4, which is check your rigging. But every boat you're going to check, and it's your engine. Always go before you start the engine and check your fluid levels, transmission fluid, check the belt, make sure it looks good. And once you've checked your fluid levels, go ahead and start up the engine. Make sure that the cooling water is flowing adequately. And then before I cast off any lines, I'll go ahead and check forward and reverse thrust. Make sure my transmission's working correctly, and also that my prop and everything else, my running gear, is in proper working order. That way I know that when I let my lines go, I have adequate maneuverability with my engine to pull out of the slip.